Hello and welcome to the Boundless Book Club from the Emiratis Literature Foundation. Today you are here with
Andrea
and me, Annabelle, and of course, Khalid. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Thank you for being here. So our special guest today certainly needs no introduction if you are tuning in from the UAE. Khalid Al Ameri is an Emirati YouTuber and vlogger who is known for his daily videos about life with his Arab-American wife, Salama Mohamed. That is the description verbatim from Wikipedia, but there is more to the story.
Yep.
I have a Wikipedia page?
Are you just learning about this now?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, you have a Wikipedia page.
Oh, check it out.
Khalid creates videos that educate, entertain, and bring us all closer together in a COVID-19 safe way right now, though. And one of the things I love about your videos, Khalid, apart from your wife, who is hilarious, please tell her that I am a fan, is how they speak to our universal experience no matter where we are from or what we look like. Yes, the videos are funny, but they also blow stereotypes out of the water, which is a mission close to our hearts at the Literature Foundation. So today we are going to be talking about stereotypes. I read a great quote about them. Stereotypes are a bit like air, invisible, but always present. Before we get on to the books we have chosen, I want to ask you, what is the stereotype about your own culture that winds you up the most?
I think for me, probably the number one stereotype is, you know, how people assume that we're all, like everything's given to us and that we have this sort of access to infinite or near infinite material wealth. And that really, like internally, whenever I just like, I tense up and it's just because like I come like from, like my parents struggled, you know, like my mom had to work at a retirement home to save up money to buy a ticket to come with my father back here. We got what we needed. We got so much love, but in terms of material wealth, we were like every family, just trying to make it, trying to, get a better life. And my dad worked for every single thing that he ever got, and he studied for every single thing that he ever got. My mom worked for every single thing that she got, and she studied for every single thing that she got. So for people to just assume that I look the way I look, or we wear the, I can give you hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of stories just like mine. So for people to assume that, the day that I'm born, I just have this access to wealth, and it's just, it just really like hurts, because I know that the time and effort that my mom and my dad put into creating the life that we're able to have. And I know the work ethic of, Salama and, the work ethic that I have that was passed down from our families and how it translates into the work that we do. And for people to assume that it was just given. We fight and work hard for everything. To cut a long story short, it's people having the belief that we just have an infinite amount of wealth.
So in preparation for this episode, I decided to do a bit of research into our respective stereotypes with the help of Google. So you probably have done this, where you type in YR and you put in the nationality and then let Google autocomplete it for you. So Khalid, the only stereotype Google wants to suggest is, why are Emiratis so wealthy? That's the only thing that they've got.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas for Annabelle, who's from England, there are plenty. If you want to know the top three, you've got, why are the English, number one, so boring, which really surprised me. Number two, so bad at languages, which is not so surprising. And number three, again, big surprise for me, so good at music. That's
not been my experience.
That's
weird.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully agree with those either.
No.
I was expecting a different set of stereotypes, honestly.
Yes.
I don't know if maybe I was expecting, why do the English drink so much? Something about football. That's what I was expecting.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That would be valid, but this is what Google tells me, and Google is never wrong, obviously.
I don't
It's
think
on the internet.
guys, you've had some fantastic musicians that have, changed the face of music. I mean, you've got like the Beatles, who, were enormous. You've got like, even you go modern day, you got like Adele, who's just, incredibly talented and, has really gone like international with her work. And yeah, I mean, obviously there's so many more, but like, just if you think about like, musicians from Britain who have sort of transcended, gone like international and really, viral with everything that they do, you think about them, and yeah, that's why I was kind of like with the music part. And what was it? The number one was what? Boring.
That doesn't quite stack up.
I love British humor. It's okay.
I was just going to say there are a lot of great comedians that come out of the UK, but I don't know.
Someone somewhere has clearly ruined it for everyone else. And I don't know who that person is, but someone's ruined it. So what about Sweden?
Well, so we got why are Swedes so tall? Which, I mean, I feel like this is fairly I'm 5'9". That's fairly tall. Not a giant or anything, but I think that's accurate. It says, why are Swedes so tanned? Which, I mean, I am kind of matching my blouse right now. Okay. I don't think I'm particularly tanned. And healthy, happy, reserved, I think was the most negative one. And that is something that I've heard a lot. Yeah. Well, I mean, not positive. I mean, tanned and healthy and happy is not that. It's all quite good, really.
Yeah, the tanned one surprised me because that's never been one in my head. I think I actually think more UK for that, particularly the Essex area.
Yes. Fair point.
I'm bringing up a whole new stereotype. We're supposed to be smashing them.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So on the stereotypes, I think they do exist for a reason, and I'm going to argue, playing devil's advocate while we're here to talk about stereotypes, I'm going to argue that they're actually pretty good, that they do fill a function, because they help us make sense of the world. So we categorize the world to simplify and sort of create a system with the information that we're given. So that helps us process information the next time we encounter a similar situation. So I'm not going to lecture, but one of the books I didn't choose for today is a book about Paul Bloom, who is a lecturer, well, he's a psychology professor at Yale, and he has written about stereotypes before. And he said that everyone here has experience with chairs and apples and dogs. So if you see new unfamiliar versions of these, you can guess that you can sit on the dog and you can eat the apple and the dog might bark. So that's his version of how stereotypes help us. And the problem with stereotypes then is when we start to believe that they can tell us something about an individual, because not every single dog will bark.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think for me, a lot of people would, like, when you talk about like stereotypes, they do serve a purpose. I mean, everyone loves the positive stereotypes, right? So like, I probably wouldn't be sitting here complaining or talking about, everyone's like, everyone in the, why, if you Google search, like, why is everyone in the UAE so kind? I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess just because we are, that's what we are, blah, blah, blah. So for me, I think stereotypes, I agree with that last sentence that you made, Andrea, is just like, the problem with stereotypes is when we start to mark individuals, but that's like saying like, okay, this is a general stereotype, and we use it to sort of paint a brush on every single individual. Where really, I think it should serve as maybe an outline of like, because if there's a stereotype about someone or some society, it must have come from somewhere, right? I mean, people just didn't make it up. Or maybe they did, but I sort of assume that, like it must have come from somewhere. So when people say, why are when you Google why are UAE so wealthy, it must have come from somewhere. So probably when they look at something as like, you know, the oil wealth here and do some calculations, GDP, all that stuff, they come up with a stereotype. But then people assume, okay, that is the same for every single person who's there. And I think like that's why I'm so passionate about that sentence, is because, you know, I think the problem with stereotypes is when it's used to paint a brush on individuals. But then again, we're at this point where we think, yeah, but if it's a positive stereotype, I do want to be painted with that brush. So with stereotypes, like I kind of feel like we're never going to be happy, right? Like there's never a point where everyone's like sort of satisfied, everyone's happy. So for me, like I think a stereotype should never, and this is something I've learned through the videos that we've made, a stereotype should never be strong enough that it would impact your ability to be curious and ask questions and take chances. Because the media feeds us these stereotypes every day about certain places in the world, certain people in the world. And when you get on the ground, like, let me give you the easiest example, Pakistan. So when I traveled to Pakistan, we have been fed through media this image of Pakistan, this image of, you know, how it operates, what it's like, what it looks like. I swear to God, every single stereotype was broken from like the first 10 minutes I was in that country. Everything from the people, to the hospitality, to the natural beauty, to the way, like the way people dress, to the way women dress. Just that one experience just taught me the biggest lesson is whatever stereotype is there, okay, take it, listen to it, and then go find out for yourself. You know, positive or negative, go find out for yourself. And I think that is where stereotypes have the problem. When it's shut down, when a stereotype is so strong and so broad that it just shuts down what the natural human ability to be curious and ask questions.
Here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My answers are sometimes long-winded.
That's
great.
That's good.
Thank
we
you.
like that.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, Andrea, because this is something that I'm kind of guilty of. You know how you're saying that sometimes stereotypes can be a way of, I think when you first meet somebody, of connecting with them in a kind of small talk situation, because I really struggle with that. And I am guilty of bringing up IKEA to Swedish people. And I don't know if this is even a stereotype, but I do wonder how you feel about the IKEA brand and being associated with it quite so heavily.
I mean, yeah, I think IKEA is a quality brand to be associated with. I mean, if you're talking about Jysk, for example, it'd be a different story, but you know, IKEA is all good.
So Khalid, what's a stereotype that you really like about kind of where you're from and who you are?
Hospitality.
Hospitality? Yeah,
I think again, back to the positive stereotypes, you know, yeah, keep that going, you know. But I think like I don't know anyone that's come to the UAE to visit or to live and not just be completely taken aback by the hospitality of the people here. I think it's in essence comes from, you know, Islamic and Bedouin culture, the sort of levels of hospitality, how, you know, people from here sort of go above and beyond, you know, to make people feel welcome, make people feel at home.
Did you, when you started making videos, did you expect to become this sort of ambassador for Emirati culture that you actually have become?
I still don't know, you know, I mean, I like, for me, like my mom used to say, even when I was a kid, I was an entertainer. Like she knew that I was what I was born to do. when I was like 5, 6, and my mom had all her friends over, and I would run down and like put on a show for them and start talking about my day. She would always say like how even her friends would be like listening very attentively, just that like sort of the way I would be able to tell the story and make people laugh, but also inform them at the same time. And when I did the Ramadan show on CNN, it was the first time that my mom had actually seen me, and she was just like, "Finally, you're finally doing it." And she was like really, really proud. And for me, I just wanted to add more humor to what I was trying to do, because I believe that comedy is the best way to connect with people's hearts. And if you think about breaking a stereotype, there's no better way to start than with comedy, right?
Which is why we reached out to you, because we think it's absolutely wonderful and something that we try to do as well by connecting people with books, because we know that through stories, whether they're your personal stories of cooking dinner or it's a story in a book, we know that's a way that people get empathy for others who they might not on the surface think are like them. So my book that I've chosen is, it's called Planet Omar, and it's a lovely book by Zanib Mian. And I read this book last year with my then 6-year-old, who really enjoyed it. Although I'd probably say it's more suitable for kids that are a little bit older, so like 7 to 10. And my boy, who is now 7, he was born and raised in Dubai, so he is very innocent, bless him. The subtext, that's not very subtle at all. The subtext of this book, which is about sort of racism and stereotypes of a Muslim family in the UK, they were completely lost on him. He had no idea that, the mean lady didn't like Muslims. He did not understand it at all. So this story is about Omar, who's a really nice boy who's just moved with his family to a new house and a new neighborhood and a new school. And everything is fine, apart from that in his new school, the class bully, Daniel, tells Omar that because he's Muslim, he's going to get kicked out of the country and he'll have to go and live in Pakistan. The way kids do. So Omar is now very worried because you can't get good pizza in Pakistan. And that's very important. Now, I don't know if this is true, little sidebar. Is it Pakistanis? If you're listening, please tell us about your pizza. I have no idea if you can get good pizza or not. But anyway, that's what happens in the story. And then they also have the very mean Mrs. Rogers, who lives next door, who complains very loudly about Omar's mum frying onions and cooking smelly food. So there are a few things that are not great about their new situation. But then one day, Mrs. Rogers, she has an accident, and Omar's mum is the only one there to help. And I'm not going to give away the whole story, but it's a book for children, so it's got a happy ending. Mrs. Rogers perhaps gets a taste for curry after all. And Daniel, who really is actually a very mean boy, might not be so mean at heart when you get to know him. So this story really, really gently kind of shows how being nice helps break down barriers. And if you stop being scared or sad, you might find that people are much nicer than you think. And it's really lovely. It's exactly the sort of book that I think if everybody in that generation now gets exposed to those types of books, we might have a much nicer world in a very short time frame. So that's my recommendation. It won an award. It probably won more than one award. It's the type of book that sort of, I really believe in representation. I think it's really important that people can see themselves in popular culture. And I think this type of book is great because it's not educational. It doesn't say this is what Muslims are like. It's just a fun story about a normal family doing normal things in a normal environment, and having some adventures, and they're just like us, and it's lovely. And there are 4 books in the series now, so go read them.
It's always good when there's more to look forward to.
Yes.
So, but Khalid, so what's your book that smashes stereotypes? Like, what would you recommend for that?
So for me, I think anyone who visits the UAE, you know, and this book was sold everywhere, and I absolutely love it, is a book called From Rags to Riches. And it talks about the story of the UAE from the eyes of, you know, a family that was, you know, an advisor to the UAE's founding father, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, Allah yarhamah. And it just, for me, it showed, you know, his insights into, you know, what Sheikh Zayed was thinking, what he prioritized, you know, what was important. And you see these pictures of these young Emiratis, you know, who had basically been schooled in like these tents and these clay huts, studying, you know, Quran, to now, you know, now that they had access to opportunities, they were in these suits, you know, like 13, 14 years old in suits in the UK, learning. And for me, it smashes a stereotype from a sense that people think prosperity of a country is due to the resources that, you know, Allah's blessed that country with, which I think couldn't be further from the truth. And for me, I think it's a must read for anyone that, I mean, it's sold. I mean, no one has an excuse when they come to the UAE to not get From Rags to Riches. I think when I was coming back from traveling, I got into the UAE. It's like the first book that you see on the shelves at all the bookstores, in the customs. When you get there, it was sold in the petrol stations for people taking road trips. It's sold in all the major bookstores. And for me, it's just a book that sort of really gets you acquainted with the history and the development of this country through the eyes of someone that was so close.
I feel really, really bad that I haven't read it.
I have it.
No,
that one, and also there's that one and Don't They Know It's Friday, were the two books that were handed on arrival.
Yeah.
I know that one.
What's your book, Annabelle?
Okay, so my book is this one here. It's called Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. So John Green,
you've been taking notes.
I have. I actually had to hide all of the other notes because my book had become furry from all of the Post-its. And then I rapidly realized that I'd made enough notes for a 52-hour podcast and that was not going to work. So John Green, household name, The Fault in Our Stars is what he's best known for. And it took him, this was the first book that he wrote after The Fault in Our Stars. So the pressure was on. And it took him quite a while in between writing the two to actually write this. Now, just to give you a brief background, the stereotypes that this book is smashing are those of mental illness, in particular obsessive compulsive disorder and anxiety disorder. This is inspired by John Green's own mental health struggles. He's spoken about these before, and one of his kind of one of the things that's really important to him is discussing them, and he feels like we should be talking about mental health more openly. And the book is about this 16-year-old girl called Asa Holmes. She lives in Indianapolis, which is in Indiana, and she has severe obsessive compulsive disorder. She's got a best friend called Daisy who writes romantic Star Wars fan fiction. And amidst all of this and these amazing character relationships, they are both attempting to solve the mystery of a fugitive billionaire. So there's a lot going on, but one of the main highlights of this story is not necessarily the entertaining kind of mystery story that runs throughout the story, but it's about Asa and how she copes with being a teenager and also having this incredibly debilitating mental illness. So one of the ways that her OCD manifests is she has, to ease her anxiety, she's done this thing since, you know, as long as she can remember, where she kind of cuts open this finger repeatedly. Ooh. And every time it heals, she cracks it open again, and she puts a Band-Aid over it. But then she becomes obsessive about bacteria getting in and getting infected. And one of the things that she thinks about obsessively is bacteria in the gut, and getting, in particular, C. diff and all of these other things. And she constantly goes online and looks up her symptoms and thinks, oh, I could be dead in like 42 hours. I should definitely, did I wash my hands? I should definitely go and do that again. And it completely takes over her life. But one of the things that the book smashes is this idea that all OCD sufferers are fastidious neat freaks. And it doesn't always manifest that way. And I think it's something that's been presented to us quite a lot in various forms of fiction, whether it's in television, whether that's in literature. I'm thinking mostly television and film. And one series in particular that I actually remember quite enjoying is a series called Monk. I don't know if you remember this, starring Tony Shalhoub.
I do, yes.
That series has actually been criticized for the way that it handles OCD, even though it's, quite entertaining. Interestingly, when you look up John Green and what he was trying to do when he wrote this book was, if you notice her last name is Holmes, he wanted to write a story where instead of a detective whose obsessions and tics help them to solve the mystery, I can think of many where they're detectives that have savant syndrome, or, that they have something where they operate on a different mental level to other people, but it's helpful to them and it means that they get the job done. He wanted to present a book and a character where their mental illness was completely unhelpful to them, because that is what he has experienced. And I think what many people with mental illness, and particularly OCD, have felt is that it's not something that they can ever turn off, and it often gets in the way of normal life. And you're looking at the life of a 16-year-old girl as well. She's trying to have a normal teenage life, but she can't because of this illness. And one of the great things about this is everything else in her life, in terms of the support that she has. So she's got this wonderful best friend. She's got a wonderful mother who really supports her. She meets a boy who starts to like her and she likes him. On the surface, all of these things are really lovely, and she's got all of the kind of components for a wonderful teenage experience. But what they show is that it doesn't matter how supportive the people around you are, if this is broken and isn't addressed, and even if it is addressed because she has a therapist in the book, it doesn't automatically mean that you're going to get better. And I think that is the real highlight of this, is it shows you that it's not the person with the mental illness who's not trying hard enough, and it's also not the people around them that aren't trying hard enough to love them. Because if you are unwell mentally, that's something that you constantly have to fight. And again, the resolution of this book isn't clean either, because at the end of the book, when you leave Aza, she's still fighting this. She doesn't stop. It's a lifelong illness that she's going to have to deal with. So there's no kind of happy ever after where she takes a pill at the end and she no longer has obsessive compulsive disorder. It doesn't work like that. But it's written by John Green, so there are some incredibly funny moments. And there was one bit that I really wanted to read to you where she's watching a movie with a boy that she likes, and she talks about the bit where kind of your other half, or the person you like, says, "What are you thinking about?" And they want you to be like, "I'm thinking about you, darling." But you're actually thinking about how cows literally could not survive if it weren't for the bacteria in their guts, and how that sort of means that cows do not exist as independent life forms. But that's not really something you can say out loud. So ultimately you're forced to choose between lying and seeming weird. So the whole book is written in that kind of tone, and it's wonderfully funny, but also really wise as well. So that's Turtles All the Way Down by John Green.
Lovely recommendation, apart from the finger cutting that will stay with me for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. But yeah, I have to mention it as well, because when you read it, there is that kind of visceral response as a reader going, why are you doing that? But that's why he's included it, because she doesn't think it makes sense either. It disgusts her, and yet she's compelled to do it anyway. And that's the illness. But in terms of OCD, I've recommended the book and it smashes stereotypes. But were those stereotypes about OCD, like everyone having to line everything up so that it's even and neat, is that what you had in your head, or did you already have a really strong understanding of what that already looks like?
I think definitely the lining up everything in the kitchen cupboards is part of the stereotype, isn't it? but then the compulsive thoughts, and I know someone whose mum couldn't really leave the house because they had to go back and check the oven was switched off like 50 times, which seems completely debilitating, even though it's a normal thing. And sometimes you do that yourself. You think, did I switch off the oven? But you don't check it 50 times, which I think is what makes it quite sensible.
I think for me, like, people always have this general overview of what something is based on what they've seen or heard over a long period of time. Now, if you were to tell me, okay, someone's lining stuff up, then, you know, I mean, our youngest son, Abdullah, is on the autism spectrum. All right, so does that person, you know, you're describing him too. You know, I mean,
yeah.
he'll line stuff up for days everywhere. He lines all his toy animals on the bathtub, on the side of the bathtub. I mean, he'll you know, has his chocolates all lined up the way he's gonna eat them. You know, he has his food in specific areas. So so for me, and people always, like, as soon as, you know, and it's not a good thing for me. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. You know, whenever someone sends a message of you know their beautiful daughter or son that is on the autism spectrum, they always send like the animals lined up or something like that. It just as like a sign. And you know, when you were talking, Annabelle, like sort of towards the end when you talk about smashing, you know, one of the books that I read that really sort of, you know, because I had that same general overview of what autism was. So, you know, my son's gonna line stuff up, you know, he might be verbal, he might not be verbal, you know, he doesn't make eye contact. You know, I thought he's obviously, that's why it's a spectrum. You know, it's like you have various levels to this. And for me, like, the book that I read was that sort of, you know, that I think really smashes stereotypes is a book called The Reason I Jump. And it's written from the perspective of a 13-year-old boy. So it's who's on the autism spectrum. And I think that's the best way that you could really convey that message, because a lot of experts, a lot of parents seem to be able to share what autism is and isn't, but it's really great to hear it from a child's perspective, and very deep, and it goes really in depth into what, you know, a child is thinking in certain moments, and what their fears are, and what their emotions are, and what they're hoping for. And we don't think about that. We don't think about that. Whenever we think about these type of things, we think, we think it's all an exterior thing, you know, with a child or a person with autism. We think, oh, they're doing that, but what are they feeling when they do that? What are they thinking when they do that? You think, okay, like, for example, that the mom had to go 50 times back and forth to just check. But do we ever ask the question, did they ever think that, well, my mind is telling me, or everything's telling me that it's okay, I've checked it, even though I know that it's fine, I'm still going back and back and back, and it's killing me inside, and I'm burning because I know, but I keep going back. We never think about those things. We just think, oh, they're just doing it just to get on with their day. But if you read, you know, The Reason I Jump, you realize that when a child is having a breakdown, you know, the child knows. They know. You know, they're suffering, they're struggling, they know, they see their mom or their dad upset and sad at what's happened. They know, they're processing it all, and it is killing them. The fact that they can't do anything to control it in that moment.
Is Why I Jump a fictional story, or is it like an explanation from a child's perspective?
An explanation from a child's perspective.
It sounds really interesting. Did you ever read the Curious Incident of the Boy in the Nighttime, which is kind of a fictional version of what it's like to be inside of an autistic boy's head, or a boy on the spectrum, as they say?
No, I haven't. I'm gonna Google.
It's amazing. It's one of my favorites.
Amazing. It's a boy who's on the spectrum who does an investigation into what happened to his dog. And through that, you find out all sorts of other things that are happening in his life that he is not able to process.
Okay, what's it called again?
The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime.
Yes. And all the chapters, all the pages are numbered with, gosh, how am I not, I'm reaching for the word. They're all numbered with prime numbers, because he really cares about prime numbers. So it's all like the whole thing is just packaged so well to put you inside of his shoes.
And I feel for me, those are the type of books that I want to read. Like that's the, like, I mean, the inner voices of people, namely struggling with mental health. I mean, those are the voices that you want to hear. Like, a lot of people are focused on the external of what someone does when they're suffering from, you know, whatever it is they're suffering from. But we never think about the inner voices of what someone's feeling when they know exactly what's going on, but they just can't do anything in that moment.
You should read this. You'd love it.
For sure, inshallah. And the reason that it hit me so hard and was because, you know, they like, I don't want to be quoted verbatim on this, but I read the book a while ago, but I believe that the boy likened it to hell, of struggling and suffering and knowing and causing like worry and harm to people around you, knowing that you're doing it and not being able to control it at the same time is like, you know, it's like hell. Because imagine being unable, like, you know that it, and you want to stop it, and you want to see your parents smiling and happy, and you all these things, but there's nothing you can do to stop it. And for me, that was the part that, you know, like when I was reading the book, like when we read the book, when we were sort of like understanding what our son Abdullah was going through, and that is why, you know, now we always question, you know, when we hear about other cases, you know, when we always ask, you know, it made us like much more patient as parents, because, you know, Abdullah's an angel. You know, he's a great kid, mashallah. But like when you know, he does something, you know, we try and sort of balance between, you know, just letting him be a kid, but also like trying to understand why he's doing that, versus just assuming it's part of why he's on the spectrum. Like, okay, Abdullah makes eye contact, but I can guarantee you, if he wasn't making eye contact, we wouldn't just assume, oh yeah, he's on the spectrum, he's cool, yeah, it's going to be a bit weird and awkward. Yeah, maybe there's something else. You know, maybe we need to ask those questions. Like, maybe there's something else that's got nothing to do with him being on the spectrum. For these type of books that explore the inner emotions and voices that people are feeling, you know, regardless of what they're going through, are the ones that I feel connect most to our hearts and allow us to show more empathy. You know, because when you only look at the external thing, it becomes more comedic rather than, you know, you look, oh yeah, she or he does that. Yeah, it's their OCD. It's their OCD. You know, oh, is that why you open the, you know, it becomes this sort of like, we become kind of like numb to things, where I think when we hear those inner voices, we really understand what someone's going through, and we're able to sort of show more compassion, show more empathy, and number 3, be more inquisitive and inquire more about what someone is going through, versus just, you know, assuming that everything is part of their OCD and just taking a very surface level approach to things to the point that it becomes, you know, just something that they do and we just smile and, you know, go on with our day. Where I feel that we need to do much more than that as friends, as family, as parents, as sisters, as moms, as anyone, when it comes to, you know, supporting people with mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I think empathy is always the answer. Okay, I think I'm going to round up the conversation with a general conclusion, which is that we should all read more books. Stereotypes are not always wrong. They're not always bad if you don't give them too much credibility. But remember that no stereotype will tell you anything that's worth knowing about any single individual. Do you agree or disagree? Please tell us. We would love your take on this, so drop us an email at comms@emiratilitfest.com or on social media. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You know who else you can find on social media? This guy, Khalid Al Ameri, but you knew that, didn't you? Khalid.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again so much for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure.
It was an honor to be here. Keep up the great work, both of you. You guys are doing an incredible job. It was an honor to be here.
Thank you. That's all for today. Until next time, tune into the Boundless Book Club next time.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.